You know, years ago, Ubisoft released Far Cry 3, and in that game, there's that famous line about insanity, the idea that doing the same thing over and over again while expecting a different result is completely irrational. And at the time, it came from a villain's mouth, and today, it feels like it applies to Ubisoft. So what does that tell you? Because here we are again, another Ubisoft project, another report about development troubles, another round of developers frustrated with management, another round of deadlines, restructuring, internal problems, and uncertainty about the future of a major franchise. And this time, it's Ghost Recon. According to a new report from Insider Gaming, the next Ghost Recon title, codenamed OVR, has reportedly hit significant development trouble. Internal reviews have apparently gone terribly, developers are frustrated, alternative plans have apparently been rejected, and there are growing concerns about where the project is actually headed. And while none of that is good news for Ghost Recon fans, the bigger story is that we've heard versions of this exact same story before. Different franchises, different studios, different year, same Ubisoft. And listen, as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of games like Rainbow Six Siege. I'm actually a part of the Ubisoft Creator Program, but I'm still going to call out what I perceive is just gross negligence when it comes to the management of these studios, time and time again, year over year. It is a massive problem when Rainbow Six Siege is the only shooter in your repertoire that is actually successful right now. That is fucking crazy. And that's the part that really frustrates me, because Ghost Recon isn't just some dead franchise nobody cares about. Ghost Recon has survived for more than 2 decades. The original games helped define tactical shooters for an entire generation. Advanced Warfighter was massive. Future Soldier still has people asking for a sequel. And then Ubisoft, I think, stumbled upon something really special with Wildlands. Even though I didn't like the direction at the time, the game wasn't perfect, but it did understand something very important and unlocked a core power fantasy that a lot of players were actually asking for at the time. People wanted to feel like they were a part of a military unit operating behind enemy lines with things like reconnaissance, planning, coordination, open-ended objectives, the freedom to approach a mission however you wanted. The game wasn't a hardcore milsim, but it did capture that fantasy that I think very few games at the time were offering. And then we got to Breakpoint. And we all know how that went. Breakpoint launched as one of Ubisoft's biggest misfires in the franchise's history, a game so disconnected from what the fans actually wanted that Ubisoft did spend years afterwards trying to repair the damage, and to their credit, they eventually did. Not completely, not perfectly, but updates like the Motherland update finally started moving that game in a direction that felt like Ghost Recon again and gave players the freedom that they got with Wildlands. Which is why this latest report is so frustrating to me, because Ghost Recon should be one of the easiest wins that Ubisoft has. The tactical shooter space, at least in the AAA side, is non-existent. Ghost Recon has no direct competition in the AAA space, yet somehow Ubisoft keeps finding ways to make what should be a very straightforward franchise always struggle. And listen, we all know that development issues happen. They do at every single studio. But here, the Ghost Recon fans have spent years waiting for Ubisoft to get this franchise back on track. And every time it feels like we're finally moving forward, something else happens. Ubisoft spent more than a decade trying to turn one of the most beloved parts of Black Flag into its own game. Think about that for a second. They already had proof that people wanted naval combat. They already had proof that that formula worked. And somehow it took over 10 years, multiple reported reboots, delays, and leadership changes before Skull and Bones finally limped across the finish line. And now where is it today? Take Division Heartland, for example. They announced it in 2021, multiple public tests, years of development at Red Storm, community updates, marketing, resources, a bunch of time put into it. And then Ubisoft just canceled it outright right before release and shifted those developers elsewhere. If you want to relate it back to Ghost Recon itself, this one drives me insane because it tells me exactly where Ubisoft was when it came to the franchise just a few short years ago. Fans spent years asking for more tactical gameplay, better squad mechanics, more authentic military operations, a return to the identity of the franchise, and Ubisoft's answer, just I think 3 years ago, was to announce a 100-player battle royale. And the backlash was so immediate, the community hated it so bad, the tech tests were delayed, and then less than a year later, the entire project was canceled. How does that happen? How does a company misread its own audience so badly for a franchise that they've owned for 2 decades? Like, how did they fuck that up? And then we get reports that Ghost Recon OVR, the new project, was going to be more like Ready or Not, with really grounded military, tactical, first-person shooter mechanics. Everybody's excited, and they still fuck it up. In this memo that was shared with Insider Gaming, Project OVR recently failed to meet internal alpha objectives, leading to Ubisoft to bring in a new senior producer, a new VP of production, and a VP of global creative offices. They were all brought in to be more present on a day-to-day basis, including being on the work floor. And according to Insider Gaming, developers are getting a little worried. People who spoke under the condition that they wouldn't be named say that Ghost Recon has been plagued by unrealistic deadlines and poor planning and management. During the review, alternative production plans were proposed, but the Ubisoft HQ team rejected them. Some within the company believe that the directors are doing what they want as opposed to listening to the HQ feedback on the game. Internally, there are rumors among employees that the game could face either a complete reboot or outright cancellation in favor of a different project if things don't improve. There have already been what were said to be silent layoffs at the studio, and staff are expecting more layoffs to come in the near future. How the fuck did we get here? Honestly, death by 1,000 decisions. Not one bad game, not one bad developer. 1,000 small decisions made by people who never had to deal with the consequences of them and who really probably never even played video games to begin with. A feature added here because somebody thought it would increase engagement, focusing on fucking NFTs and crypto. A mechanic copied because it worked in another game. A project rebooted because leadership changed. A franchise pushed in a different direction because trends shifted. And eventually, you wake up one day and realize the thing you're making doesn't really know what it wants to be anymore. That's how you get Breakpoint. That's how you get Frontline. That's how you get games like Heartland. And maybe that's how you get games like Project OVR. I hope Project OVR turns out great. I genuinely do. I hope Ubisoft proves everybody wrong and Ghost Recon comes back stronger than ever. The worst part about this story isn't that Ghost Recon might be in trouble. The worst part is that nobody's surprised. 5 years ago, a report like this might have shocked people. Today, it feels expected. Years ago, Ubisoft gave us that memorable quote, the idea that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again while expecting a different result. And where we're at today is that nobody expects anything but failure from Ubisoft before they've even shown the game. The headlines are talking about the trouble with Ghost Recon, but as we all know, the real problem lies with Ubisoft.